Moja ni fahari yetu, undugu ndio nguvu.
Welcome to Living Truthfully. My name is Amani Maranga. This has been a difficult week for our country. Merchants of death visited our country and disrupted our way of life in what is now known as the Riverside attack. For those who lost loved ones and those who are nursing injuries and trauma, we stand with you. For our security forces who valiantly put their lives on the line so that justice can remain our shield and defender, we salute you. For the many men and women who supported and are still supporting our recovery process, thank you. Cowardly acts of terror have been met with bravery and unity because we are one nation under God, one people, one creed, one Kenya. We are unbowed.
Daima mimi Mkenya, mwananchi mzalendo.
In the previous episode of Living Truthfully, I started a conversation with Dr. Oscar Githua, a forensic psychologist, about the genesis of some of my patterns and what he calls cycles. The conversation continues now from when I meet my biological father for the first time.
Then when you finish high school, when you're 18,
Yes.
You meet him.
Yes, I did.
And how was that like?
So it was as a result of a fight I had with my mom. And I just cleared high school. It was the gap year.
Yeah.
Before you know where you're going to go, Campo. I was studying computers at a college in Buruburu. And I remember the genesis of the fight. But anyway, we have this fight.
Yeah.
And I tell my mother, if I knew my dad, you'd not be treating me like this. And she gives me his phone number.
Oh, I was just like, oh, yeah.
So here, have it.
Yeah.
Have it. So I get this phone number of a landline, house phone number.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what to do with it. Because this is it. I mean, that my entire life's search has come to this head now.
To these digits.
And what do I do? I didn't have a phone at home. There was a phone booth right outside my house. If you're a millennial, Google phone booth. Not the movie, but it will give you a structure that you can look at.
Piece of equipment.
Yeah. But then the time there was that phenomenon that had also started called phone bureaus.
Yes.
So the phone bureaus were where you could use somebody else's landline to make a call, and they sort of meter the call, and
that's right.
You pay.
It's almost the same concept Safaricom had for Simia Jamii.
Yes, for Simia Jamii, which is an entirely new. That's a story on my career, by the way. Simia Jamii is somewhere in my career. Anyway, So I go to make this phone call to now, my dad, and I decided not to use the phone booth because I don't want my minutes to end and then that phone is cut. So I go to the bureau, and it was not too far from our house, and I make the call, and he picks up.
Wow.
And I say, my name is Amani Maranga. I'm hoping that he recognizes the second name.
Yes.
And he says, I know who you are. And I ask him, and he asked me, how did you get my number? And I tell him my mom gave it to me. And I tell him I'd like to meet him. Yeah. And so we set up a meeting for, I think it was probably a couple of weeks because he travels a lot.
Yes.
And so we set up this meeting. The story of that meeting is a movie on its own because he was late. He was to come where I was doing my college in Buruburu Shopping Center.
Yeah.
I left class early to meet the guy. I waited. I think I was supposed to meet at 1. I must have left at 12:30.
Yeah.
I waited until 3.
Wow.
And then I decided to go home, and I realized, and I figured he's not coming.
Wow.
So I started walking home. We lived in Donholm, and so there were 2 ways you could walk. either through a market called Mtindwa,
Yes, Mtindo.
and into Umoja to Donholm, or I could walk through Buruburu all the way to like Buruburu High School, cross the road onto Jogoo Road and walk back to Donholm. Now that's a much longer route,
Of course.
but I figured if he's coming, that's the route he was going to come through.
Yes.
And so I decided to walk on that route, watching oncoming traffic.
Wow.
Trying to figure out if the person in that car is my father. I've never met him. I don't even have an image of how he looks like. And I start walking and I'm looking to every car that's oncoming. And when we got to phase 4, this RAV4, this blue RAV4, has a man and a woman. And the man and I, we lock eyes. And then he stops.
Wow.
And he gets out of the car and he asks me, "Are you Amani?" And that was him.
Wow.
It was him and his wife.
Wow.
And so that's how I met my dad. And we went back to Buru Shopping Center. He bought me chips. We sat in the car and we spoke. I hated that he came with his wife.
Of course.
Because I felt like that sort of
Yeah.
set boundaries. I respected it though, because it showed that he had nothing to hide.
Yes.
I think that was the first time I realized that I don't know how this was going to go.
What had been happening to you, Mani, is that throughout your teenage years, as you're angry at your mom for not introducing you to your father, blocking you, he was becoming bigger every day. He had become the anti-hero, and he was becoming this bigger, larger than life person, larger than life. The first thing that humanizes him and disappoints you is he comes to, it's 2 hours later than when you're supposed to be meeting. He hasn't said it, you don't know. Then you start walking. Remember, you're young, your hope is alive, you're looking through the cars, you're whatever, and some miraculous thing happens, you see him, he's with his wife. The second point of deflation is, oh my goodness, he has another life. And here's another thing, Amani, for you, and it's about to set context. Your whole life had revolved around your father in your teenage.
It's true.
But his had not revolved around you. That is such a profound setup for what is to happen later. So remember that bank we talked about? Deposit that one.
The heart bank, the pain bank.
The pain bank. Deposit that one. That was probably, like the days when you deposit 5K, the days when you deposit 500K. This one is 500K.
Half a mic.
This is
half a mic of pain.
Yes.
Wow.
Because it's expectation. So you had elevated him to level 70, 80. Then he comes in at level 20. As the most man.
with all fallibilities of a man like the ones I have today.
Yeah. And you see, the interesting thing, and I want your listeners to understand something about parents, that parents are superheroes to their children. And therefore, what protects our childhood most of the times is our ability. That's why superhero movies do so well. Because kids understand, kids relate to that at a subconscious level. I'm watching Iron Man and I'm watching Superman, but I actually live with him. So there's nothing that your movie is telling me. It's just that this Iron Man of yours has better gadgets, better. But the one I live with is
He's a real Iron Man.
He's a real Iron Man. Because, I mean, in Nairobi, where are you going to see a guy flying through the sky? So
I think I was Iron Man to my kids. And then now they don't like my jokes anymore. So now I'm Iron Man without good jokes. That's it.
and but you see, that's the thing. It's that, we're still building and we're building. This is Amani, and Amani is built from this amazing fabric. You've gone to amazing schools. You've done all these things, but then you're carrying this bank.
The pain bank.
The pain bank that you've deposited in. It's getting heavy.
Yeah. I'm just thinking if I could withdraw from it and translate that to M-Pesa, I'd be balling out of control.
The GDP of Kenya would turn into the GDP of Japan.
But it would so quickly.
Because of all of us. And especially if I just talk about men, and I know women have a lot of pain. I don't discredit that at all. But a lot of men are walking around with our pain banks that we've deposited into consistently years after years after year after year, decade after decade after decade, and you have never withdrawn, or you withdraw, and when you withdraw, it's ugly. And it looks like alcoholism, it looks like depression, it looks like domestic violence, it looks like infidelity, it looks like corruption, it looks like not being honest, it looks like being a con man, it looks like trying to one up every man, it looks like stealing people's wives, it looks like, but I'm saying that it is from a bank. And that just the same way you have withdrawing via Visa, via cash, via M-Pesa, via cryptocurrency, it does not matter, but it gets withdrawn. If it means it's at the end of life, you've struggled and you've become such a nice guy all through your life, but then on your deathbed, in Kiswahili, zinalipuka. And all of a sudden, you find there's a 76-year-old guy who is now divorcing his third wife and marrying another 22-year-old because now him is tired of all these women who've killed him all his life. But he has a paying bank that's been depositing, and now at 76 is when now he's starting to withdraw. And people are saying he's changed. I'm here to propose something. He's not changed. He's just withdrawing from his bank.
Wow.
Okay, let's move on. You've met Dad. It's a dramatic story. Then you go to college, right? Then I bump into you that time.
Yeah.
When you become pastor. but then you go to college. You're very dynamic in college. You're a personality already.
I turned out into something. I don't know how.
Right? And so you're a person who people look up to and want to be like. Look at Amani Maranga. He's very well spoken. He's funny. He's witty. He's all these things. And so at school, you remember that identity you were chasing in your teenage? You've now deposited Dad and his reality. Now you've said, actually, the real identity I need to pick up is my own.
It's mine. Yeah, it's true. I did realize I was by myself.
Yeah.
And I had a really good time in college.
Yeah.
I had a really good time in college. But what happened is college got cut short. Because we didn't have enough money.
Okay.
And so somewhere in my second year of school, I had to leave school.
Wow.
And now that you've said those things,
yes,
you've actually reminded me the disappointment I felt when finally something was working out.
Yes.
And then it's nipped.
So you have the bank, remember?
Yeah. Like it was, I remember feeling I am king. This is one place I belong.
Yes. I can define myself.
Yeah. And then
cut short. Another piece of disappointment. And of course, a study was done about people on their deathbed, men and women. And when the men were asked what was the most important thing in their life, it was the legacy that left, including their career. But for women, it was the relationships they'd had over the period. So what I'm trying to suggest to you is that when you're in college, you're creating your legacy.
I started creating my legacy.
Started doing that. And then if it's cut short, as a man, it's a fundamental part of who you are as an identity. And so therefore, it cripples you. It literally renders you, I'll use the word impotent. And I want you to hold on to that word because it comes back later. And remember, you've deposited it. You're now impotent at 21. And I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about existentially.
Yeah.
So hold on to that one. So what happens after college?
I think some things switched on for me. And one of those things was like, I really realized I was alone.
Yeah.
That even these my folks, who are well-meaning, couldn't sort me out. And my biological father, who I thought had the financial ability to sort this out, didn't come through.
Wow.
And so I realized I was on my own.
Yeah.
So I went out and looked for a job.
Wow.
And thankfully, I started working.
Yes.
And a year later, I moved out of home because I was on my own. Like
literally,
I figured I might as well just take control of my life. And that's what I did. And I worked hard, man. I worked hard. And at 21, when I moved out of home, I moved to Roysambu, to a flat.
Yeah.
That 2-bedroom flat that I shared with a friend. We paid 4K each.
Yeah.
So it was 8 Gs. At 30, I was living in Lavington.
Wow.
In a house I was paying a mortgage for.
That's amazing. In terms of like just, picking yourself out.
Yeah, I worked hard.
Yes.
I took every opportunity that would come my way. I created opportunity. There was no work too small. I believed in myself because I only had me.
Yes.
And I made something out of me. Obviously, until I got a girl pregnant, and then now I had to get married, and then
interesting.
I start picking up a new a new set of life. But what I think for me, excuse me,
sorry, of course.
I think for me there was disappointment when I left college.
Yeah.
But it also gave me impetus to just work and to prove to everyone that I can make it on my own. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's such. The reason I'm smiling, it's incongruent to the story. I'm smiling because, first of all, it's such an uplifting part of your life that tells you, that human beings have such resilience and a capacity to do good for themselves. And if everything is put in the right place, and if we actually are cognizant of that fact from when someone's young, they can become such an incredible person. Definitely, you have a lot in you, even as a human being, that has set you up to be successful no matter what. But then think about it. In Roisa, you're living in this place, 2-bedroom, blah, blah, blah. Then you said something in passing, which I'm assuring Kitsogo na just pass.
Oh, what was that?
Until I got a girl pregnant, and then I had to get married. Which was, I know, of course, probably you're dating her and stuff like that.
Actually not. And this is actually an important part of that story because okay. Like there's several ways to unpack this conversation, and I've had the time to look back on it.
Yeah.
But let's jump to this part where I'm doing fairly well.
Yes.
Well, okay, I'm doing okay, but I can tell that I'm on the right path.
Yes.
I was working in advertising at the time. And I was managing a nightclub at the same time. So I had 2 jobs. I was living the American dream in Nairobi.
Yeah.
And I was now feeling like I'm getting my stuff together, and there's momentum, there's progress. I'd had some relationships that hadn't worked out before. One of them that was a pretty painful breakup.
Yeah.
But then I start fooling around. And at that time, I'm fooling around because now I have this freedom, I have this, energy, and things are going well. So it's just part of my process.
Yes.
And in that process of fooling around, this girl that, we were with gets pregnant.
Yes.
And she got pregnant at an interesting time because I remember I had just quit both jobs.
Wow.
Because I was trying to get into business. And I was tired of, I was really just physically tired. And I just started my leave. The leave that you have after you've given your note, terminal leave. And then 1 week into it, and she tells me, I'm pregnant. And I have to make a decision. And here I chose to do the right thing.
Of course.
And so, I made I must say, I made a decision.
Yes.
I own it because I said to myself, this is not a bad person. She ticks some boxes for me.
Absolutely.
She, even just the way she carried herself around the fact that she was pregnant and how she handled our relationship at that time, whatever that relationship looked like.
Yes.
I was very impressed by that. And I said, okay, why not?
Yes.
But I know now, looking back,
Yes.
that decision was also made because there was a child there that was going to grow up without a father. And having grown up without a father, I was not going to give that child that chance. So
I'm telling you don't even need me for that part. Because it's the burden of 9 years old not being consulted. You're not going to put that on any other kid. So you withdrew
from the pain bank.
The first mistake.
And I made that decision.
That's right. It clouded you.
Yeah, it did.
So you went to the bank and withdrew. And it clouded your decision. And look, I don't want listeners to imagine that if I'm telling men who make women pregnant not to go ahead and settle down with them. I'm talking about context, and I'm also talking about cycles, and I'm talking about things that come later on as withdrawals. And I'm not saying that there's no way to make sure that it's done well. But you see, if someone knew that it was actually having an impact, it would probably be handled in a very different kind of a manner. And I think you did well to even just the fact that you said you would not want that child to grow up without a father. To me, that's a good thing, because at least you've said, I'm owning this decision. I'm going to be responsible, and therefore I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to try to make it work. That, to me, as a human being, is so important, to try and make it work.
Yeah. So, but I messed it up.
It was bound to happen, Amani. I'm not even going to color.
Sugarcoat it.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because you're not ready.
I wasn't.
You're not ready, and you're not ready not because you're immature, but because life had brought it. You had so much responsibility from 21 that the only thing that your biology and psychology knew was responsibility. So this looked like just another responsibility. And the problem with it is that now then it's other people, and then they've brought their own. Then also, like, she also has her own bank. Of course, she's not here, so we don't even know what her pain bank looks like or what her experience bank looks like. So you brought both your banks together, and then now when someone triggers something in your life, like maybe your mom did something and she looks like she's done something like your mom was doing when you're in your teenage, then you withdraw from your teenagehood, the anger you had, and then instead of hitting her because you're a nice guy and you have a reputation, you decide there's another girl here who's going to make me feel better, and she sounds better, and that's where I'm going to go.
Actually, you're so right, because when I started evaluating my process then, and you've said it's just that you didn't know what you were saying.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
One of the things that was an issue for me was affirmation. So I didn't feel like, I guess because I was fighting as an angry teenager, I was angry with my mom.
Of course.
So I didn't feel like I did anything right in my mother's eyes. And even by the time I was leaving and trying to make something of myself, one of the people I was trying to prove to I can get my shit together was my mom.
Absolutely.
So now I marry this very good mother to my children, strong woman, building a corporate career.
Absolutely. Who
at the time, and she says she used to affirm me, but I never used to hear it. Yes. And so I see the lack of affirmation, just like my mother.
Yes.
I'm working hard, Mazi. I'm working hard.
Of course. And you see, as a man, and this is a trick for all the girls out there listening, it does not hurt to just tell the guy in your life that you appreciate that he's working hard.
I preach that gospel every day.
The difference in your case, though, man, is that, can I even say it straight?
Say it.
It wasn't even her affirmation you wanted. It was your mom's.
I agree.
And what happened is that she became mom in terms of like personification, so that if she said it, you couldn't hear it. And not because she wasn't saying it. And remember, she's come from her own background, her own whatever. So she's thinking, it should be obvious. I mean, if I've told you this, it's good. But it's like she's telling it to you, but she doesn't know she even has another debt.
She's depositing into a hole.
That's it. She's depositing in the wrong slot. It's like, you go and you're doing payroll for your workers, and then instead of paying Onyango or Kamau, you put Onyango's paycheck in Kamau's and Kamau's in Onyango's, but then they don't even know each other and they're in different towns. Basically, you've given them a check, but it just doesn't happen to be theirs. So she gave you a check, but she was not even your employer. But the person who you wanted it from, this goes straight. I mean, a parallel I can draw is the same thing with domestic violence. When there's an abuser, I don't know if you've watched that Surviving R. Kelly thing, by the way.
I haven't yet, but I've seen the vitriol.
Yes, there's a lot of that. But one of the things I always talk about when I'm talking about violence and stuff is, one of the questions people ask is, why do people stay even if there's all this abuse going on? But even last night, I even said it somewhere else in another forum. I said, the reason why someone stays sometime, of course there are many other reasons, but one of the fundamental ones, psychologically and psychically to me, is because this person who has battered you is the one who took it. Is the one who said you're not beautiful. Is the one who said you're not good looking. It's the one who said you're not making enough. Is the one who said you're not worth anything. So no matter how many other people outside there affirm you of how you look or how you are, how you're strong or whatever, beautiful, you'll never listen to it. The same parallel I'm drawing. That in the same way that this abused person will not accept those affirmations from other people other than the abuser, the same thing for you. The genesis of your pain bank, that check had been drawn by mom at 9 years old, and she was the one who needed to be depositing into you at that age as a man who is now a father. That if you paid a visit to mom and she said, my son, I am so proud of you that you've made something of yourself now and you're doing this, that would have meant way more than even your wife at the time affirming you.
Poor girl. She tried.
I know. And by the way, Amani, as I said, I'm not going to hold any prisoners.
Yeah.
Because I'm putting context and I think why I like being with you and talking with you is because we understand it's not about, it's not about ascribing blame or absolving people or whatever it is, but it's just to understand ourselves better. And it frees you. It kind of frees you to know that, you know what, it was a pure and a clean oversight. I mean, there was no way you're going to know that you needed mom to be the one saying it.
At the time.
At the time,
there was no way of knowing. I came to realize it later. Yeah. But then, I mean, definitely what happened is now if somebody else affirmed me, you know,
absolutely.
And a hot chick would tell me, Amani, you work so hard.
Yes.
You're such a hard work. I like the way you've done something. Come here.
And then you are impotent at 21 and she makes you potent.
Hey.
Yeah.
Okay. So this any of these women who would,
they are giving you the golden word called virility. You had been robbed of your manhood and they gave it back to you. Simple.
Wow.
Not that you were not being intimate with your wife. Of course you are, and that's how you have children. But hers was more obligatory because she was family. And when a man marries a woman, he's marrying a Madonna who is supposed to be the mother of their children. So therefore, they're not the object of making them virile or give them potency. And that's why when you see people when they're 50 and 40 sleeping with a 19-year-old girl, it's virility. It's not that they've never done that all their life. It's this person re-energizes them, their spirit, everything inside them. So whoever these girls were, they were just an affirmation not only about how you are doing, but how you are doing.
Next on Living Truthfully. There's a lot of men like me who, I hope that by listening to this conversation have drawn parallels for themselves.
Yeah.
And where they realize that the boy in them has some healing to do or some things to revisit.
Yeah.
What do you tell a guy who's starting to figure that out? Like what's a compass direction you can give that guy?